A lot of us saw this coming. As a black person in this country, your acceptance comes with conditions. Every black footballer is one game away from a torrent of racist abuse. Imagine playing under that kind of pressure. Tweeted by Everyday Racism _. Hello and welcome to Tuesday's episode of Toy Talks. My name is Toy Washington. I am the host of the Toy Talks podcast, and each and every Tuesday we have a brand new episode delivered by me on the Toy Talks podcast, available on all podcast platforms. Now, this week, right, I had done the treatment, finished the treatment of what this episode was going to be about. I was going to actually talk about the church, my relationship with religion, how religion and culture has played its role in how we as black women navigate the world of work. I wanted to share some experiences that I've had that has made me make certain decisions in terms of my religious leanings, and how the church has truly affected how I saw life. And I had a whole treatment of an episode, but something said to me that no, Toya, you can't record yet. You need to wait until this Euro football thing and the finals, in which England qualified for the finals, because ordinarily I was planning to record this on the Sunday, and somebody just said no, wait until this match is done and just record on Monday. So here I am on Monday. Now, for some of you who don't know, then you must be under a rock, but if you don't, then allow me to give you a little bit of background. So England qualified for the Euro 2021, I think that's what it's called, and it was basically off the backs of the hard work of the black footballers that play for the England team. Now, yesterday was the finals, and I went out early, and I already felt the tension in the air, because one thing about this country, as in the UK, England, is their culture is based on football, alcohol, the pub, and Sunday dinner, which usually is had in the pub. So if we want to talk about culture, that is how I view culture here in England. So this qualification into the finals was only ever going to go one of two ways. And when I did my Instagram stories, a lot of you who follow me on Instagram will witness the fact that I said this. I said, listen, to my black community, please get home safely before the end of the game at 9:30 p.m. Because we know that if England do not win, where we have become citizens over the last couple of games, where black people, black players have allowed them to qualify, and I say allowed them to qualify because if it wasn't for the gifted football players of the England team who are black, England wouldn't have qualified. So because of that, we as black people became citizens. Yeah? But because we know this game can go one of two ways, we know on Monday we might be called the N-word, or we might be referred to as monkeys. And sure as hell, that's exactly what has happened. Now, I want to come at it from a different angle, because we've all read in the press and we've seen politicians who have been discriminatory towards the black community are now coming out to condemn racism, because the way this country operates is racism is sewn into the fabric of society, because racism here in England works very covertly. You know, you hear the sayings about England that, oh, you know, they're very, it's pervasive, like it's very covert, it's very like under the surface, it's very, when we talk about macroaggressions, you see the microaggressions, and black people as a community, we are gaslit constantly because racism is seen as covert. So it's literally a case of being gaslighted, or people questioning whether actually are you being a little sensitive. And that's how racism has allowed itself to be sewn into the fabric of this society. But you see, when you have an abhorrent form of racism where it is overt, it's very difficult for this country to pretend it doesn't exist. Okay? And what we saw is it literally was an avalanche of racism on a scale that here in the UK we don't see unless there is something like a qualifying football match or a finals, whereby the white people in England feel like we are at fault. And we have seen the young black kings who are amazing players and they basically were appointed by Gareth Southgate, who is the England manager, and they were picked to do the penalty shootout, and they missed. And the youngest of them is 19 years old. We're talking about a 19-year-old boy, young man, who is basically flourishing and growing into the man that he is going to be. And because he missed it, you could see the look on his face. And Gareth Southgate, we saw like a picture of him hugging our young black king. And it was such a powerful image because in 96, Gareth Southgate missed a penalty which cost England the win. And he suffered from abuse on a scale that even when he tells you what he went through, you would be shocked. And Gareth Southgate is a white man. And I said this on Sunday before the finals. I said it. How is it that you're now talking about making Gareth Southgate, giving him a knighthood, but you were threatening his family back in 96? This man had to go under police protection. This man was fearing for his life because he was receiving death threats. And it is the fact that this country is so fickle. It's so fickle. And on top of that, this country feels so entitled. It's entitled. As I was driving on Sunday, I said it to my partner. I said, half of these people, these English flags, yeah, are EDL. And he was looking at me. I was like, Toya. I was like, no, I'm telling you. There is listen, even as they were supporting England, oh, we're in the final, it's coming home, it was laced in racism. Because you felt it. Listen, in the UK, they put a lot of effort into reminding us that this is not our home. So when you say it's coming home, which home? Which home? Because you tell us we should go back home, that we don't belong here. And I'm going to go into the spiritual aspect of what happened on Sunday. And I'm serious. You guys are going to start laughing or whatever, but I'm telling you that, listen, you see in here, England, it will never come home. The last time they won was is it 1966? There is a reason. There is a reason. And I'm going to pause there and I'm going to explain something that happened on Friday, because as we were seeing this, oh, it's coming home, the way England was making noise, the way they were making noise, I said, this is not going to end well, because it hasn't come home since 1966. England hasn't repented from its sins. So why do you think that it's coming home now? So all week, that's all we've been hearing. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of you in your offices. In fact, I was looking on social media. I was seeing my fellow black people telling me they feel patriotic. All of this. I was just watching everybody using their teeth. I feel patriotic. I go, it's just brilliant coming home. Yeah? Bullshit. At work, we had a sweepstake and everything. They were going mad. I was being harassed to participate in a sweepstake that I have no interest. And I just said, you know what? Fine. Like, give me whatever team, I'll give you the money. Because then it seems like, oh, you're not taking part, you're a spoil sport. And it wasn't that. It's just that I know how football and any type of sport is in this country. I know that this country that I reside in is racist. From the monarchy, from the current government, racist. We take the knee and we are demonized. We take the knee and we are dramatized. We take the knee and we're accused of being the starters of all trouble. When we say Black Lives Matter, white people have to say all lives matter. But what they're not understanding is Black lives have never mattered in this country. So when we tell you Black Lives Matter, it's to remind you we're not part of your all lives, because you haven't treated us like Black Lives Matter. So we're just reiterating the fact that we do matter too. This whole country was built off the back of immigrants. This entire country. Built off the back of immigrants. Those immigrants are also black people, but this country, they're not ready for that chat. They're not. Friday, I'm doing my work just as normal. I have a call with one of my colleagues. So let's call this colleague Malcolm. So out of nowhere, because me and Malcolm are cool, no, never any problem. We're working on a project together. He said, oh, Toya, what are you doing this weekend? What are you doing this weekend? I said, I'm just going to relax. I've got a couple of things I need to get done. Oh, Sunday's the match. Where are you going to be watching it? I was like, oh, I said to him, I don't know. I don't watch football. I don't really like football. So, oh, no. Your children are one day, this is a white man, oh, your children are going to ask you, where were you in the Euro Finals 2021? And what are you going to say to them? I said, well, Malcolm, I don't actually think my children will ask me where I was. I think what they'll ask me is where I was when George Floyd was murdered. I think that's the question they'll ask me. Do you know, this man looked at me, yeah? Because this was over Teams. Like, somebody just poured water on him. But the look he gave me, like, oh, why? Why would you take it there? It's always there. I stay on crud. Always. He made his excuses and ended the call. This Monday morning, he sent me a message on Teams. Toy, I was thinking about kind of like how our conversation ended on Friday, and I just wanted to apologize. No, that's not the reason. It now makes sense, the stance and my response to you, because the racism that black people have endured from the beginning of time, that also now includes what happened on Sunday, you now realize why this country ain't shit and why I don't give a flying fuck about your football. Because as black people, we are constantly triggered every day. Our whole existence is a triggering in this country because they refuse to accept that racism exists. I'm going to come to that racial equality report that came out. I'm going to come to that in a minute because Boris is a dickhead. I'm coming. But it gets better. At work, the morning meeting was cancelled. So we usually have a meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning. It was cancelled because my boss knows, like, we're not on it. And she also recognises that England are probably at a 7-day morning. So she don't want to even get into it. Today was so quiet at work, I managed to get through all my emails that I couldn't respond to last week. Because this is how this country operates. They've lost football. They've lost the football. They're not thinking about how the black players have been racially discriminated against. They're not thinking about the monkey and banana emojis. They're not talking about the racial slurs that are levied against black people. What they care about is losing. But they're a bunch of losers. They've been losing since 1966. That's a long time to be a loser. They need to get used to that title. They're a bunch of losers. So one of my colleagues, an Asian woman, and you've heard me talk about Sindy before. So Cindy's been away for a while. Don't worry. The update for Sindy is coming because you know what? When the ancestors have been doing her, I don't understand. I wasn't understanding why. Oh, I understood. Because the ancestors understood that she is mad. Do you know Sindy texted my phone? I didn't respond. She sent me a Teams message. I didn't respond. This woman called me on Teams. I thought, let me just answer this. So she, she's been away for a while. She was just talking shit. And she asked me if I was okay. And I was like, no, I'm not. I said, after what happened yesterday, to be honest with you, I'm highly triggered and I feel very uncomfortable. And actually, I feel quite heavy. So I would appreciate it if we could end the call because I do kind of just need to be in my own space. And she said, oh, it was so bad. Those black boys, da, 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 da. And then she said, well, Toya, but I am struggling. Like, what is the thing that we're going to do to stamp out racism? What are we going to do as a country? Because, Malcolm X, he was just mad. I said, what? She said, Malcolm X, Malcolm X, he was mad. So what are we going to do as a country? I said, sorry. I said, listen, Sindy, you are an Asian woman. Do you understand? And I would say I expect better from you, but I don't. Because BAME creates a sense of comfort to you. But I'm telling you that our racial experiences are not the same. But for you to call a black man who advocated for the abolition of slavery, the abolition of racism, for you to sit here and tell me Malcolm X is mad, you're the mad one. I said, after all, isn't it not your husband that decided to quit his job because he didn't feel like it? And now you're having heart palpitations because of stress, because you're carrying your whole family. And yet you're telling me you're married to a man. That ain't a man in your house, honey. He's one of your children. I said, secondly, don't ever get comfortable with me where you think that you can discredit any black person, either historically or in the present day. Because you and I are not comrades here. It will only take a foolish person that here's a black woman telling you that she feels heavy for you to now tell me that a prominent figure in the black community is mad. I said, this is off the back of less than 12 hours ago what happened in a football. And you're telling me, what can we do to stamp out racism? I said, let me tell you, the reason why you're comfortable there in that your broken chair is because you feel like you have a proximity to whiteness because you're married to a white man. But let me tell you, darling, you can marry 10 white men. You will always be an Asian woman and they will always other you. They will always other you. And just because you look at black people as beneath you, you better understand you're still beneath the very people that you seek to protect. I said, don't ever in your life ring my phone to tell me rubbish. Do you understand me? I said, and if you've got an issue with anything I've said on this call, I'm happy to put in a meeting with me, you and Deborah. Remember, Deborah is a black woman. So I will be very interested to see how you justify to her why you think Malcolm X is mad and why you think that it was appropriate for you to even introduce Malcolm X into any type of conversation. I said, you know what? It's people like you that think that you are educated. You're not educated. I said, you're not. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to go and get educated. I said, but what you're never going to do is disrespect me ever in your life. So take this as a Monday morning warning. Don't you ever discredit me or anything to do with my community. Because as soon as you do that, I'll remind you of today. And I just hung up, leave me in. This girl has been calling all day. I'm not interested. I'm not interested. Because I feel like, as black women, I always tell you to be strategic. I always tell you them things. But when somebody's standing in your face to say, a prominent figure within our black community who was assassinated for what he believes in. When someone comes to you and tell you he's mad, in the context of how can we be allies, I'm sorry, sometimes your call to action is also in the conversation. And the way I'm set up, there is no way she can justify what she said. No way. That's why she's been calling me. Before I logged off, I called her. I said, I told you to stop ringing my phone and you've called me 27 times. What is the problem? She said, oh, you know what, Toya? I thought about what you said. I'm sincerely apologetic. I said, please do not start crying because I'm going to take that as a disrespect. Because when you start putting on the waterworks, you're leaning to a fragility that you have no right to tap into. Don't go there. She said that she's going to educate herself, all of this. I said, I'm happy for you. I said, you're not my enemy, you know. I'm not even annoyed. I'm actually severely disappointed that as an Asian woman that is othered in this country, that you saw fit to say what you did. And you have to live with that. And you have to live with the karma that you have sown when you said it. That's nothing to do with me. I've said my piece to you. I'm done. She was like, oh, you know, if she has any issues at work, does she still feel like she can contact me? I said, that's up to you. But I don't owe you anything. I don't owe you to make you feel better about what you said. You've got to live with that. However you want to do it, it's up to you. And don't sit here telling me that you're not racist. I don't want to hear it. I'm not interested. What I'm interested about is actually preserving my peace. And the only way to do that is to end this conversation. So she said bye. I said bye. Ended the conversation. You know, I will say that there has to be something said for the fact that we're, like, some of us are remote working, and I thank God that I've been able to preserve some of my peace and just be able to sit in my emotions and how I feel, be able to process what's happened whilst remote working. Because to watch white people walking around all glum because they lost would trigger me, and it would put me on edge, and I will get angry quicker. Do you understand? And whereas I've not had to see that, I've not had to see white people act like they are the victims as per usual, I definitely feel like there has been a respite that has been needed to process what happened on Sunday. And I know a lot of us black queens have felt quite heavy because, you know, I've shared with you my experiences of the world of work where a banana was left on my desk. I've shared with you where I've had pieces of paper thrown at me, and I know that it's because I'm a black woman, because I know our white counterparts, they would not respond to each other in that way. The constant use of racist slurs that seem to be so easy for some white people to use is just crazy to me. A whole football match will have you basically calling people derogatory racial slurs because you feel that they're responsible for why you haven't won. And it's not because of the karma that as a colony that you guys have ingrained into this society, you're reaping the karma. I'm sorry, your ancestors, your colonial forefathers, they sowed a seed, and unfortunately you've got to reap it. But what pisses me off is the fact that non-black people who are not white still feel entitled to speak how they speak. And this is why I've always said BAME is so problematic. And actually, if anybody refers to me as BAME, I'm going to pick them up on it. I'm not having it anymore. I am done. Okay, so I feel like if I'm in a situation like a meeting and somebody says something that's racially derogatory, I'm going to challenge it. If it's me asking them to repeat it or explain what they mean, I'm going to do that. I definitely feel that will also add to the burn folder. Unfortunately, Sindy is now in my shit list and she's on my burn folder because you don't get to get away with that. That can't be the first time that she said something like that, because she was just so confident about saying it. Like I would just be nodding my head like a fool. I don't understand, because I would never in my life ever think to be disrespectful to anybody in another community who had a public figure like Malcolm X. I'd never do it. It wouldn't even come to my mind. But it's the fact that non-black people are it's so easy for them to tap into that. And then you want to turn around and say, I'm not racist. You are. You are racist towards black people, because you would only say that because he was a black man. There was other people that's advocated for black people or who've stood in the community. Why did you choose him? Why do you think that he's mad? And do you know what? If it wasn't for the fact that I was so angry, I wanted to tap into why him, because there's something about that. But again, I don't want to have to exhaust myself with having to understand why a person is being disrespectful, discriminatory. I don't have the energy for it. And I wanted to bring this to the podcast because there is something very cathartic about being able to really come on here and seek refuge in and amongst my black queens and say, this is also my experience, because I'm human just like you. I cut just like you. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. Because I understand how white people operate in the workplace, because I understand how non-black people operate in the workplace, how I navigate is very calculated and it's very strategic. But you see today, when Sindy said what she did, if I had let her get away with it, if I had let her, it's like giving her a license to now go around and spew that rhetoric. And number one, I'm not going to allow her to do it. Number two, I'm not going to be responsible for giving her the license to do it. And I was calm. I didn't shout. It's not who I am. I was calm in my response to her because what I had to say to her needed to penetrate in her mind. I saw her eyes tearing up. I don't care. Cry. There's tissues behind you in your house. Go and pick it up. Sometimes it's good to cry, but crying is not going to stop us from talking. Last week, I received a DM from a white man, and he sent me a DM and he said, your podcast is racist, laugh out loud. I'm not even going to start explaining how racism works. I'm not going to give the definition of racism, but this is what I am going to say. I understand that non-black people are often accessing my podcast and the platform and feel uncomfortable with what I have to say, but I'm telling you the truth. I am not a racist person, and I don't believe that black people have the ability to be racist because of the need for power that only exists with white people. So for racism to actually operate, power is intrinsic to that. So unless you want me to now start doing a teaching session, a lecture session about racism, but what I am going to say, because I'm sure that person's listening to this podcast, don't try me. Do not try me, because my platform is not for you. So why you find yourself here, I don't know. But if you're finding yourself here to educate yourself, then do just that. Don't come and police me. Don't try to tone police me, and don't try to message police me. Do not do it. This platform has been created for the benefit of black women. This podcast has then been created for the education of black women so we can strategically navigate the world of work. Then black men, if you feel to access this platform, fine, but I center black women. Then all other races, non-black people, if you seek to be educated, that's great. But part of being educated is you don't come and swoop into my DMs and talk shit. Sometimes just shut your mouth and be educated. Just shut it up. It's not every day that non-black people have to talk. Sometimes there's a strength in just shutting up your mouth and allowing black people to educate you, because you don't understand the effects of your racism. You don't understand the effects of colonization. You don't understand the decisions that your ancestors and forefathers made is the reason why we have to create a podcast like this. Don't try me. And before I could post what he wrote, he deleted it because he knew that I am the one all the time. I am on that type of crud that you're looking for. Don't come looking for conversation. You think I'm going to have a debate with you. I no longer debate with white people or non-black people about racism. I won't have the debate. I won't try and convince. I'm not trying to do any of that. What I am going to do is create a safe space for black women like me to have conversation and speak on the things that need to be spoken about. What I am going to do is be an advocate and an activist for black women. Because as far as I am concerned, as a black woman, we are never picked first, if at all. And I stand firm in my activism because this platform and podcast is changing the lives of black women, both domestically and internationally. And actually, if you feel the need to come into my DMs to say anything or anything that relates to, oh, it's not all of us, it's some, I'm not going to start doing that because let me tell you something. As black people, we're not stupid, first and foremost, despite what you stupid assholes may think. We understand that it's not all white people, but to constantly have to do a disclaimer, it's not all white people, it's some white people, that is also exhausting because it's playing into the white fragility that I will always say I refuse to do. Listen here. I cannot and I will not and I do not have the time to babysit your fragility and then carry the weight of trauma, carry the weight of the racism that I'm directly encountering and affected by. Black women, we're not built to carry anybody else. We're not built to carry anyone. We should just be able to exist without having our existence intrinsically linked to trauma and carry the weight of white fragility too. I'm not doing it. Do you understand? So if you have a problem with this podcast and what it does, it's probably because it's shaking the foundation of your racist views. It's probably shaking the foundation of what you find comfortable because you're having to now confront your racism and your prejudice. And I'm not here to now make you feel better about yourself because you've realized that you're a racist. Do you understand? We're not stupid. We know that not all white people are racist. But unfortunately, we're not in a position to start carving out who and what. We, however, are in a situation now where we have to vocally tell you what is going on because you refuse to see the truth. Unless racism is as over as it's been in the last 24 hours, some white people refuse to even acknowledge that racism exists. We have certain reports like the Race and Ethnic Disparities report that was released this year, completely gaslighting black people as a community. We as black people were gaslit by this report because this report basically said that racism doesn't exist. This is a report commissioned by the current government. Yes, your prime minister, and he's yours because I didn't bloody elect him. Somebody out there did, and it bloody well wasn't me. Commissioned this report that says that racism does not exist. And in fact, the UK, England is the best place to live because racism does not exist here anymore. So you can understand the contradiction and the confusion when you've got Boris Johnson seemingly, overtly condemning racism. But wasn't it you, Boris Johnson, that said that Muslim women who cover and use the niqab to cover look like letterboxes? This is what the current Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson, said. When black football players was taking the knee, Boris Johnson didn't have anything positive to say about that. In fact, taking the knee in this country was seen as problematic. Yeah, the Home Secretary, she had her comment. I'm not going to go into what they said because I actually don't want to breathe life in their stupidity. But I'm sitting here telling you that a lot of what we're seeing today is performative. Prince William has condemned the racism and the abhorrent racist discrimination that the players of the England team experience. But your brother told you that your sister-in-law is also experiencing racism, but you don't want to acknowledge that. It's this one that you want to acknowledge. Pick a side and be consistent, William, because you know your current position is not making sense. Do you understand? It's like your house is on fire and you're saying, oh, I can see all the fires out there, but you're not seeing that your own house is on fire. It don't make no sense. It make sense. On top of that, Priti Patel herself, the Home Secretary, is also condemning racism. But wasn't it you that basically was saying disparaging things about protests, for peaceful protests, Black Lives Matter protests? And you have actually changed the legislation during COVID to make it harder for people, especially people in the Black community, to protest. Isn't it not you, babe? Asking for a friend. This is why I'm telling you, politicians, businesses, organisations, it's performative. These are the same people that have never supported or advocated for Black people. In fact, they've sought to gaslight us. When you have this race and disparity report, you are gaslighting us as a community and basically telling us that what we see as racism isn't really that. So are you telling us that our experiences don't exist? So it only exists when we see monkey emojis, we're called the N-word, bananas, used as emojis to racially discriminate. Is that when you see racism? And this is what I'm saying about this country. When it is over, they'll tell you it's a minority few that did it. When it's over. When it's covert, they said, oh, are you sure? I don't think so. They'll gaslight you. This country, whether you want to accept it or not, from the monarchy right to the government, from everywhere in between, this country is racist. Yeah? And as soon as we get to a point of understanding that this country is racist and talk about the historical systematic racism that has a grip on this country, we will always find ourselves in a position, as we are now, or always one game away, always one situation away of being racially discriminated against. Black people in this country, we go through so much. And we go through so much because a majority of the racism in this country is covert. And we need to now start calling this shit out. So when Sindy come with her stupidity today, I had to call it out. It was my duty to call it out. Because you've come to me, a Black woman, to come and tell me Malcolm X is mad. I can't sit there. What am I supposed to do? I have to say something. Because otherwise, this Sindy will now go to her friends. She will now go to her community. She will now go to anybody that will listen and tell them what she's told a Black woman. And they will say, oh, what did that Black woman say? Oh, she didn't say nothing. No. Now, you will even think twice before you even tell them that you said that. First and foremost. And when you do tell them and ask you what I said, you will have to say the truth. Now, I want to move on to spiritually what's happened here. And I think you guys know what I'm going to say. But let's say it anyway. You said it's calm in home. The only thing that's calm in home is COVID. You saw these barbaric hooligans in Trafalgar Square. They literally destroyed streets, cars. I'm telling you, if that was Black people, the Home Secretary would accuse us of being terrorists. Yeah. These people broke all COVID rules because we're still within the rules of COVID here in the UK. They've cancelled Notting Hill Carnival, but they had time for football. Racism. Let's be honest. Call it what it is. We can't have carnival. Not like me, I will go. But it's the principle of the matter. They've cancelled Notting Hill Carnival, but they were allowed to have Wembley. Do you know how big Wembley Stadium is? They have Wembley Stadium to have a football match. I didn't see not one mask. How can you see a mask? They needed their face to be shown so that we can hear the racism that they were spewing out of their dirty, stinking mouths. This country here, England, have not won the cup. Is it World Cup, Euro Cup, since 1966? Do you know why? Because it's called karma. You can't say it's coming home when you've got African artifacts locked in that your British Museum. Because what you are doing is you're angering the ancestors. Because when you tell them it's coming home, the ancestors think they're returning back to where they came from. The ancestors are returning back through the artifacts back to their country of origin in Africa. But you don't want to do that. The level of racism that's embedded in this country, the colonial structures predicated on Black slaves, the things that have happened that England have had a hand in historically, it's like sowing a seed and they're harvesting it in what is important to them, which is football. You can't take the football home. until you confess your sins of racism and you abolish racism and you stamp it out. Until you return the artifacts that belong to Africa, it will never come home. Even that your ball is white, your ball is even racist. So you can't be scoring goals that will cause you guys to carry a cup. It's not. Even the cup that you're carrying, I'm sure the gold is from Africa. So the ancestors are vexed. The ancestors are angry because the plight of us black people, we are still suffering here. So as we are suffering, you think you will win a cup? You think you're going to win something? You're not winning shit. You're not winning anything. Let me help you. You will come so close like a final and you will lose. You will never see win to the things that mean too much to this country, like football. You will never see win. Let me help you. On a spiritual level, on a spiritual plane, you haven't given black people reparations for what this country has done. This country's hands is stinking. And until this country confesses its sins, the ancestors will not allow them to go. This is a spiritual bondage that England are going through. That's why it will never come home. That's why only thing coming home is the COVID. Let me help you to understand. So all of you that are congregated here, this platform is not for you. Hear it. Tell them Toya Talks told you. It's spiritual. And only those who are spiritually minded will understand on a spiritual level why England can never win any cup. It can't happen. Even allowing England to get to the final, there was a spiritual redemption that could have happened. And I don't think Gareth Southgate is a bad person. I think that he made a few mistakes. However, this country will always try to use black people as a sacrifice. So the ancestors realized that England refuses to repent. That's why you lot lost. Do you understand? So the shame that you're feeling is because you refuse to get rid of this racism that has a strong hold on this country. Until racism disappears, until reparations are had, until you return all the artifacts from all these museums here that has been pillaged, stolen, until you send it back to Africa, this England ain't winning no cup. The only cup that you're winning is the one that has tea in it, in that your cafe. Did you hear me? You want to rewind it? Do you want me to say it again? What's happening is spiritual. And those who have a spiritual mind will understand. I don't care who this offends. I don't give a shit. Because when black people are constantly spat on, bullied, discriminated, kicked, punched, my whole existence as a black woman, I'm looking over my shoulder. I'm having to be strategic. Do you know how exhausting it was to be a black woman today at work? I'm fucking tired. I was tired at midday. That means I'd only worked 4 hours. I was tired. Because I didn't know what I was walking into at work. As many of you, do you know how many DMs I got today? Toya, how do we approach work? How do we? Because we don't know what reception that we're going to receive. But we are the ones, we as black people are the victims in all of this. But yet we understand the white power structures that we're walking into. That we don't even want anything. We just want peace. Leave us alone. And the worst part of it is, and some of you are not realizing this, part of the anxiety, the worry about work is because, listen, these thugs and hooligans, I think some of you think that they are from the worst parts of society. Some of them are your CEOs, shareholders, managing directors, line managers. They're your bosses. They've just swapped their suits, ties and shirts for English jersey. That's it. Some of these people have families. You look at them, you think, oh, they're proper people of society. Some of these people will tell you that they train under sevens. Some of them will even tell you, oh, They are board members at their child's school. Do you understand? What about Andrew Bone, commercial building manager at Savills? Let me tell you what he posted yesterday. N-word, because I'm not saying that word, ruined it for us. He wrote the word. He said ends, ruined it for us. And he had the cheek to do it, not only from his Twitter account, but he had the audacity, the audacious audacity to write ends, ruined it for us. Then let me tell you Savills' response, because you know one thing about our community is since you want to out yourself as a racist, since you want to be racist, then we're going to report you. We're going to do the job that needs to be done. Let me read to you Savills' response. So Savills' initial response was that they're going to investigate. And then you kind of think to yourself, what is it that you're investigating? It's in black and white. But again, this is what happens, isn't it? Because it's almost like white people are shocked when they're confronted with racism. They still don't believe. Then a few hours later, Savills responded. Savills confirms that the staff member connected with the racist comments placed on Twitter claims that his account was taken over by a third party and that the matter is being referred to the Greater Manchester Police. Savills has acted swiftly and confirms that the individual is suspended from duty pending the findings of this investigation, which is being progressed as a priority. Savills has a policy of zero tolerance and any form of racial abuse or discrimination. So I've added Savills and I said I'm personally going to follow this. Let me tell you something. My black sisters, my black community. You know the only way we as a community will hold racist people, racist organizations accountable is to stamp it out. I can't be the only one that is going to go to Savills and say, what is the response? We need to, listen, this is why we talk about black power, black spending. Stop going to Savills. Start naming and shaming these organizations with proof on social media. Call them to account. Call them to account. Because what happens is we as a community become complicit in silencing racism, because racism is predicated on it being covert. It's very menacing. So when we don't talk, we're supporting the covertness of racism. You know, when we bring it out to the forefront, we challenge white people to be accountable. Because when it's in black and white, no matter how much they pretend, it's there. And one thing we know about non-black people, especially white people, is they don't like to be called racists, but they like to do racist acts. So when you call it out, you put them on a platform where they have no choice. I'm sick of it. I am sick to the death of racism. I'm sick to the death of second guessing myself. I'm sick to the death of being gaslit. Going into work, knowing that I know how to navigate, I know how to do all these things, but I'm tired because I don't actually know how I'm going to navigate today, because it's predicated on the response of my counterparts who are feeling emotional that they lost. They're not actually concentrating on what happened afterwards. I saw people on social media being kicked, punched at Wembley Stadium. I saw black men being attacked. I've heard of black men being attacked. Then I watched two white men throw what looks like a black man into the River Thames. It's like a modern day lynching is what I saw, just because 3 black men missed in a penalty. They're not thinking about how they even got to the finals. Black people. You have an economy, black people. You have an industry, black people. You have society that's predicated on economics, black people. But we only hold value when we're performing for you. When we're performing for you, we have value. But when we don't give you medals, then you remember that we should go back home, that we don't belong here, that our home's not here. You remember that we're monkeys. You remember that we need bananas. You remember to racially discriminate against us. Our existence is not predicated on performing for you. Black people are tired. We're tired. The history books holds our battle scars. And in modern day society, we are still going through this systemic, endemic racism. Who said? Then you feel that you can have the impetus to slide into my DMs and tell me that my podcast is racist. Are you fucking crazy, dumb, stupid, and imbecile? There is nothing racist about this podcast. But the problem is, this podcast strips you naked. That's your problem. I told you I'm going to speak on what needs to be spoken. Because for far too long, we have been complicit in allowing you to continue to oppress us. Because we haven't used our voice, because for so long, we haven't had the ability. Before social media, we even suffered worse. Because at that point, there wasn't a place where we could share each other's experience. We couldn't name and shame the Karens and who else it is. There was no video evidence. Now we are in the age of social media. There is nowhere to hide. Nowhere to hide. And alcohol will not be your excuse, because alcohol is part of your culture. So you need to learn how to manage your alcohol. How can I on Sunday? It was around midday. No, sorry. It was around just after 1 p.m. I go into Tesco's in my local area, and there is a man. He's a white man with his child. He stinks of booze. Eyes are red and everything. He's got his car keys in one hand, and he's got a big basket of alcohol in another hand. This man pays for his alcohol. At no point does anybody intercept or tell him, actually. I watch him go to his car with his child in the back seat. He is putting the key into the ignition to drive. This is how this country celebrated England being in the final. So when I came that afternoon and I said, dear my black community, please get home safe. Please get home before the end of the match. I already knew that not only could this go both ways, but if it doesn't go the way that satisfies those England supporters, they're going to forget everything that's happened before, and they'll hit the factory reset and tell us to go home. Tell us that we are monkeys, banana signs. And the worst part of it is, as they are racially discriminating against us, as they're doing it, they will blame everything other than them. Alcohol doesn't make you racist unless you're already racist. Football doesn't make you racist unless you are already racist. You're just a racist football supporter. Do you understand? Why is it that when non-black people show aggression, it's called passion, but when black people show passion, it's aggression? Trafalgar Square looks like a war zone because England reached the final. When Black Lives Matter were protesting, Priti Patel was using her mouth to come and chat shit. There is no balance in this country because the structure of this country has been created to benefit white people. So what will happen over the coming days is England will continue to mourn their loss of not winning, and this will be swept under the carpet. The media are not covering the man that was thrown into the River Thames. They are being very PC about how they report this. They're not going to tell you the true extent of what actually happened yesterday. Black men were being stabbed. Black people were being stabbed, attacked, violently attacked. All because England supporters believe that black people are responsible as to why they didn't bring the cup home. Not knowing that it's actually them and their forefathers that are responsible. Can you imagine? Today, Boris Johnson was talking about the lifting of the restrictions, so basically lifting lockdown on the 19th of July. A question was posed to him about England's hopes of hosting the World Cup in 2030. And this foolish man, who again refuses to comb his hair, so you know he's on crud as well, said that he is basically advocating for the fact that England should host the 2030 World Cup, while you've got other countries, and don't get it twisted, there's other racist countries as well. Even in their racism, other countries don't even want England to host it. And I'm going to say this. My black community, please, let us use our voices. Let us be active in terms of campaigning against England hosting the 2030 World Cup. It can't happen. Because what we're doing is, if we allow them to host the 2030 World Cup, that means that we're also streaming money into this country. No, 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 no. So when that starts happening, we need to campaign through the media. We need to sign petitions to make sure that the World Cup doesn't come here. We need to use our voices. We need to say no. Because you see what? This country can't even handle football in Wembley final. And it's a whole World Cup that you want to bring here. God forbid it. God forbid it. Can you imagine the type of anarchy that will be in this country if they host the 2030? I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe. If they hold the 2030 World Cup here, I need to go on a long holiday because I don't want to be in this country. Existing while black, working while black is a bloody extreme sport in this country. I'm telling you now. So I'm when it comes to football, I think I'm just going to leave it there a little bit because I feel like I have touched on all the things I wanted to touch. And I think it's important that we had this episode because I know there's a lot of people who are like, there's a lot of people I know that took time off work. And the advice I would give is that at the end of the day, Sunday has polarized racism again and again and again. So it's almost like every time this country seeks to bury the fact that racism exists, it's something happens to propel it. So no matter what happens, white people have to acknowledge that not only racism exists, but they're complicit, that they're involved. Do you understand? And I will always advocate to navigate strategically in the world of work. But if you are confronted in a situation like I was today with Sindy, you need to call it out and you need to deal with it. And you need to deal with it in such a way that you can now add that to your burn folder, but you need to speak up. We need to speak up. If someone sits there and basically seeks to gaslight you because of football, then we should be silent? No, I think you should say something. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter how big, how small, you need to say something. And then you need to, after you've said that thing, at the end of whatever meeting or whatever dialogue, you need to send an email almost confirming and summarising the exchange and then put in your burn folder. It's not an opportunity for that person to now come and justify themselves. No, you're creating an audit trail. And I've told you guys, you need to build an audit trail of conversations, especially when they're predicated on racism, seeking to oppress us as black people. It can't go on. So if you've got racism in sport, for example, like football, can you imagine what's happening in the world of work? Because we're saying that the world of work is an extreme sport. And the people that are being racist and doing all this stuff are also in suits and ties. So no matter how much you try to avoid it, it affects all of us. It's here. Do you understand? It's about how you deal with it. And I'm telling you, even with the most calmest voice, they will still call us aggressive. So my thing is this: as long as I know that I've been calm and I've said what I've said and I've created an audit trail, put in my burn folder, and if I then seek to escalate it and make a formal complaint, then I'm well within my rights to do that. I'm going to leave that there. And what you are hearing is passion, and what you are hearing is exhaustion, and what you are hearing is me using my voice and my platform to speak on what needs to be spoken about. So Boris Johnson in the UK is the UK Prime Minister. If you don't know, then, you know, well, he is, unfortunately. And this man is lifting all lockdown restrictions on the 19th. And what he basically has said is that he's going to leave it to the discretion of the British people here in the UK to decide whether to use their masks or not. This is a country that doesn't even know how to participate in the art of football, but you're giving them discretion to choose their mask. Now, the data is showing that the Delta variant infection rate is increasing expeditiously. And as such, we're seeing an increase in mortality rate. So I think middle of last week, we'd seen 20, then 23 deaths. And as of today, we've seen 200 deaths from the Delta variant. But Boris Johnson is lifting all restrictions. He's scrapping the 1 metre rule, not making it mandatory to wear face masks, and allowing businesses and organisations to determine whether they use face masks. And has told offices, don't be too quick to have people back in the office, but we're not making it mandatory that people work from home. So what you're receiving is conflicting information. And on the basis of that, organisations have swung the doors open and said, everybody get yourself into the office. And it is all because of the economy. Because if the data is saying what it's saying, it doesn't then make sense that you are now telling people you don't have to wear masks, it's not mandatory. It doesn't make sense. But what he did say, if you're in a crowded train, he would suggest you wear a mask. Well, if you're telling people to use their discretion, but you're also saying if you're in a packed train, you would wear a mask, people will do the complete opposite. Hence the reason why they made it mandatory legally to wear a mask in certain places, because they knew they couldn't rely on people to use their discretion because they're stupid. I've made it really clear, and I am very blessed to have an amazing boss. I'm not going to step 1 foot into anyone's office this year. That's not going to happen. I will review the data next year and I'll make a pragmatic decision. But as far as I'm concerned, I am a remote worker indefinitely. I don't need to come to no one's workplace. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to put myself at risk just so you can tick a tick box to say, yep, you've come in once a week. Bullshit. A lot of these organisations haven't even made their offices COVID safe. And based on, what's his name now? Boris Johnson, you know, he's not making it mandatory. So organisations would have to financially invest in making their offices COVID safe. But these organisations, what they're not realising is you're opening the floodgates and saying everybody back in the office. Yeah? And then if somebody's phone pings off to say that they've been exposed to COVID, they have to self-isolate. So organisations, you're not really being smart about what you're doing. You're not really thinking about it, are you? And I'm going to say this, I'm just going to put this out there. I put it to you that the reason why, and what do you call it, social responsibility or social accountability? What Boris is seeking to do is this. If he holds you socially accountable for the decisions that you make, when he thrusts everybody and throws everybody into lockdown during the winter months, he's going to say it's because you didn't make the right decisions and then you forced his hand and therefore it's your fault that he's now had to put everybody into lockdown and restored mandatory mask wearing and 1 meter, 2 meter rules. That's what he's going to do. And then you just ask yourself, where's Dominic Cummings in all this? Mr. Resident WikiLeaks of the UK. He's unprecedentedly quiet. Where are you, Dominic? What's going on? What is happening? And Nick Hancock has resurfaced from wherever he's been. And so is his, what are we going to call her? A mistress. Without her ring. It's all kicking off here in the UK. It's just all mad. It's just crazy. How they're dealing with the pandemic is mad. It's, you know what? It lends itself to the beginning of this pandemic when Boris Johnson refused to acknowledge COVID and basically he pushed the herd immunity. So what they're trying to do is use the vaccine to push herd immunity. And they acknowledge that there's going to be very many deaths. They also acknowledge that there's going to be increased infection rates, but yet they're still pressing ahead. The health secretary of this country supports what Boris has said. The chief medical advisor, you can see the sheer fear in his face when he's talking, because he knows that this is going to be an almighty shit show. But as this country does, they just pretend. But I'm putting it to you. If we go into lockdown in the winter months, I think we need to start really thinking about whether Boris Johnson is the right Prime Minister for this country, because we already know he's not. I think we need to start petitioning for Boris Johnson's resignation at this point, because I just think this winter is going to be a complete shit show. And I'm wondering, you know, Matt Hancock, he made his grandmother, she was like 95, get the vaccine, and we ain't seen her since. That man is a bastard, you know. Hey, this country's wild. So yeah, 19th of July, they're dubbing Freedom Day. And it's not Freedom Day, by the way. It's just an opportunity to revive the economy, because that's all they care about. They don't care about human lives. They don't give a shit about human lives, actually. They only care about money. And they know that football, return back to work, will revive the economy. So people need to start deciding like how you're going to manage this. Because for me personally, I've told you I'm a remote worker. My boss knows, you're not seeing me. Team bonding over teams. There was even one fool at work. So basically my boss was like, we're all remote working. At the end of the day, you know, we've been working remotely for over a year. You know, it's not going to change. And the one guy was like, oh, but you know, if we do want to go to the office and somebody only comes in on Monday, but I come in on Friday, how we're gonna connect so that there's a team spirit? Well, how do you think we've been doing it over the last year, you bloody idiot? You know what I've realised? Some people are so desperate to go to the office because they hate their lives. They hate their lives, honestly, and they can't stand their families. Some people want to go back to work because they don't have microwave in their house, so they want to use the office one. Sadders. Yeah, you heard what I said. I said what I bloody said, innit? This is a country that was debating on whether they should wash their legs in the shower. This is a country that you had to basically train them to wash their hands for 20 seconds. You literally have to say 20 seconds, otherwise they're not even going to wash their hands at all. This is a country that doesn't understand 1 meter rule. They see masks as an inconvenience. They don't know they're not only saving lives, but the halitosis that's coming out of their mouth as well is they need to wear their masks to save lives. They're not realising all of that. As a community, I feel like we as Black people have not only endured so much, but we go through so much. We're constantly being triggered. We're constantly being gaslit. We're constantly being undervalued. We're constantly being overlooked, and we're constantly othered. And that is exhausting. And I see it as our duty to give ourselves grace. To give ourselves grace, acknowledge when things have become heavy and give ourselves grace. If it means taking a day off work, mental health day, then that is what you do. And anybody that asks for a mental health day at work and it's refused, Toya, personally will represent you at work as we appeal it, because I'm not going to have it. I'm not going to have workplaces completely ignore the mental health of Black people because they don't see us. So they can't ever compute that Black people are just tired. Sometimes we just are tired and we just want to take some time out, because having to exist in oppressive racist constructs is exhausting. It's mind numbing. It's mentally debilitating. So if you are a non-Black person and you listen to this podcast and this platform to be educated, please hear what I am saying. Check in on your Black colleagues, because if they are quiet, like uncharacteristically quiet, it's because we are directly affected and triggered by everything that's happened over the last 24 hours and everything that just happens as part of our existence as Black people in society. I will be doing the episode that I'd planned today next week around church and culture, and specifically experiences I've had in church that's lent itself to decisions I've made about my religion and my standing and how it affects how I exist in work and in life. But we're going to leave that until next week. I am going to draw this episode to a close. I am mentally exhausted. Honestly, please do not send me DMs on Instagram or any other social media modem of Black people going through trauma. I just don't want to see it. It's really triggering to me. And I just don't want to see it because it's upsetting. It's upsetting to see someone thrown into the River Thames because of football. It's exhausting to see someone beaten and kicked and punched in the head, trigger warning. It is exhausting to see people being attacked because of football, because of racism. I don't want to see that. So please do not DM me those things. I don't want to see them. If you want to follow me on social media, then my personal Instagram is Toya_Washington. I'm always on Instagram stories. I'm very active on Instagram. If you want to follow the Toya Talks podcast Instagram page, then it's Toya_Talks. If you want to follow me on Twitter, my handle is Toya_W. Hashtag Toya Talks podcast, hashtag Toya Talks. If you would like to follow me on Snapchat, it's Toya Washington, all one word. And of course, Clubhouse, Toya Washington. And we have a club on Clubhouse called Toya Talks. If you have a work-related dilemma, you would like me to read it out and advise you here on the Toya Talks podcast, then email hello@toyatalks.com with, on the subject box, please just say dilemma so that I'm aware it's a dilemma. I have also been asked several times about whether I do public speaking, whether I do presentations and things in organisations. And of course, if you visited the website, toytalks.com, you will see that that is a service, it's a paid service that I offer. So your organisations have a learning and development budget. And from that budget, or any other budget they have, they are able to book me to come and speak about racial equality, diversity, discrimination, macroaggressions, Black people, Black women's existence in the workplace, how we navigate, and often the oppressive structures that we are confronted with as we navigate the world working whilst Black. So that is something that I offer. Email hello@toytalks.com. My assistant will respond to you and then I can book an initial consultation. Again, that is paid, but all information is available on the toytalks.com website. And I want to thank each and every one of you for connecting. I want to thank you for listening to the podcast, all the messages that I get. I really love hearing from you guys about your views about the episodes, or your DMs about, you know, experiences. You want to share how you feel. I'm all for that, you know, and I want to thank each and every one of you for your support, your ongoing support as we develop the Toy Talks podcast platform and brand. As you all know, the Toy Talks podcast is here created centering Black women. The Toy Talks podcast and platform advises, guides, and teaches Black women how to navigate the world of work safely as we light up the path of our success. Success is attainable for us Black women too. Even though they other us and pretend that we don't exist, trivialise our emotions and trivialise our achievements, the reality is we can strategically navigate the world of work and become successful in our own right. And this is where we strip back everything and we talk about things honestly. I bring my experiences to the table, and more importantly, I give you practical tools as we navigate the world of work. I have attained success in my career in the world of work, often working in white dominated spaces, and I share everything here about how I attain success, and also even being successful, the things that I still have to go through as I navigate the world of work too. And this is a safe place, as I mentioned before, for us to come and share here. And as I provide you the tools, and as we talk about tools, you know that there's the masterclasses on the toytalks.com website. Go ahead and check it out, see what's beneficial to you, and go ahead and download the masterclasses. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to see you guys again next week, Tuesday. Please take care of yourself, your mental health. Please take some respite. Please give yourself grace. Take care of yourselves and each other. So I'm going to leave you with this. Black people in the workplace may not have thousands of hooligans hurling racist abuse towards them on social media, but there is a certain level of empathy that exists because we know what it feels like to have excellent work ignored and any failings highlighted as an indication of your ability and value. Tweeted by 6 Safe Spaces. My name is Toya Washington, and you have been listening to the Toy Talks podcast.